Hello, and welcome to episode 93 of TBR, the To Be Read podcast, where we talk about the books we love and the topics that interest us. My name is Patrick Stemp, and with me, as always, I have Michael Ronn and John L. Monk. How are you guys doing?
Great, Patrick. How are you this week?
Good.
Super.
And just FYI, Michael, because it was a problem before we started, your video kicked in just as we went live.
Hey, all right.
So I don't know what's going on there. Anyway.
YouTube.
Yeah, or Google. Let's blame Google. So this week we're going to be talking about reading by the numbers, basically how we pick our reading goals throughout the year and what's a good goal, what's a not so good goal. And before we get into that, we're going to talk about what we've been reading over the last week. And Michael, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, this was not a very good week for me. I made some progress on The Burning Room by Michael Connelly. That's still the Harry Bosch book. I only got 10% of the way from where I was last week. So sadly, I don't have much to report. My personal life was kind of busy this week. But I also picked up Heinlein's Rules by Dean Wesley Smith. Have you guys picked that up yet or heard of it?
How is it?
It's pretty good. I mean, he like all of his books, he releases them on blog posts first. So I had read 99% of the book. There's only a couple of chapters that he threw up at the last minute that I haven't read yet. So, I mean, that's just going to be a pretty quick read. But I just kind of started rereading what I had read before. And with Dean Wesley Smith, that's always, it's always entertaining, at least. And a lot of his blog posts this past week were pretty entertaining as well. So, and then I also reread, because I'm doing a video on it for my YouTube channel, How Authors Sell Publishing Rights by Orna Ross and Helen Sedgwick. So I'd mentioned this before, but Orna Ross is the founder of the Alliance of Independent Authors, which is a great organization that advances the cause of indies everywhere. And Helen Sedgwick is a licensed attorney and author, and she's the author of the Self-Publisher's Handbook. So you've got a really great activist and a really great attorney getting together writing a book that teaches you everything you need to know about copyright, publishing rights, and every kind of right you can actually imagine. So the book is actually quite large, and I enjoyed it. It's one of those where you can read it again and pull some things out of it that you didn't the first time, kind of like the Copyright Handbook, if you guys have ever read that. So, yeah, it's a good book. I would definitely recommend it, and if people were to ask me, how do I learn about copyright? How do I, blah, 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 this is probably the book I would recommend. So, definitely a light fiction reading week for me, but at least I got some nonfiction read.
Did you start Midshipmen's Hope yet, our book of the month?
Oh, God. I haven't yet. I'm going to have to binge read that book.
It's not a short one. You better get started.
I know. And I have the audiobook, and I have this book club book that I'm supposed to read with Anais Concepcion and Maya. So, yeah, I need to, chain myself to my armchair and just read. But I'll get it done.
Yeah, do we need to push it back a week, maybe? I mean, I'm fine with that. Give them some...
No, I should be okay. I mean, you said 50%, right?
I said 50% if you didn't.
I'm holding myself to that at least.
If you didn't like it, why kill yourself?
Well, I have the audiobook though. I picked that up as well, so I should be able to get through it a little bit faster than.
No idea how the audiobook is. I just know that
I don't
reading the words made me feel good. So.
Well, anytime I see the audiobook and it's like $2 or $3, it's like, well, why not? Right? I mean,
right. That's right.
I can't help it. Now, I wouldn't buy an audiobook if it's $12.99. That's ridiculous. But
it depends. You're going to go across country in a car. I'd pay almost any amount for a good one.
For a good one, yes. But
yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just like for the Burning Room, I really wanted to hear what a Harry Bosch novel sounded like. But I bought the book and it was like $10. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I love this author. I'll pay the damn $10. And then okay, well, what about the Whisper Sync version? And it's like $12.99. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't care if it's like Scott Brick. I'm not gonna. I mean, yeah, that's a topic for another show.
Okay, I'll go next. I have been reading Midshipmen's Hope, so I'll put John's mind a little bit at ease. I'm about 60% in. And it has grown on me. It's a bit of a slow burn to get into it, but once you get used to the world that they're living in, and things start to happen, it really starts to kind of pick up, and it gets really interesting. So I'm enjoying it quite a bit. We'll obviously talk about that one in a few more weeks. I wanted to make sure I didn't have to binge read it like Michael.
I read last month's book in it early, so I'm
There you
catching.
go.
It all evens out in the end.
Because the problem I'm having right now is I've got so many books that I really do want to read, and Midshipmen's Hope has turned out to be one of them. I have been enjoying it. I'm not forcing myself or anything, but I'm still really enjoying the third book in Marcus Saki's Brilliance trilogy, which I should have done next week, and Robert J. Sawyer's Quantum Night, which has been a good read so far. And I did finish a book. I finished Nerys Wheatley's Mutation, which is book 1 in the 25% series.
Mm-hmm.
So in this one, a zombie apocalypse happened, although it's not called that in the book. It's attributed to a thing called Mears disease. And the premise of this is that a certain number of people were able to survive the zombie apocalypse. They still became zombies, but if it's caught early enough and they are treated, they turn into zombies, and they tie them down in a bed and they scream and yell, and they have to feed them human flesh until they kind of come out the other side. And those that do survive it, they end up with like white eyes, and this is what some people in the book call them, is white eyes. And so they're considered survivors, and they're kind of, people are a little bit scared of them. They have a little bit of extra, some heightened senses like smell and some extra strength and stuff like that. The main character in this story, Alex, is a police officer, and the premise is basically that he is sort of, circumstances throw him and a anti-survivor activist together, a character named Micah, and this sort of a second wave of the apocalypse hits, a new strain of the virus that turns people in, they turn in 10 minutes, whereas during the first wave it took them like a day or two to turn. So things happen very quickly in this. These two people who despise each other because one's a survivor and the other is an anti-survivor activist, they're kind of thrown together and forced to try to survive this very quick apocalypse together. It takes place in England, and in a smallish town, I think, that kind of gets cut off. And it's good. I enjoyed it a lot. It's book 1. I've got book 2 on the Kindle. I haven't started it yet, though. It's one that I would like to start reading right away, but I've got all these other books on the go already. It does tie up all the major threads in this story, but it also leaves a couple sort of cliffhanger things open. Like it's a good kind of cliffhanger where the major story elements, this path through the story is has an ending, but and I think the book ends with kind of the first. It didn't seem like a whole chapter, like the first little bit of the very beginning of the next book, where things kind of kick off very quickly again, it seems. So I enjoyed that one quite a bit.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I'll
Cool.
add that to my to-be-read list.
And I think, other than a whole bunch of other, bits and pieces of reading here and there, I'm reading Iterate and Optimize. That's the new book by the guys over at Sterling and Stone. Not too far into that one. And got a lot of reading done across a lot of different books.
Cool.
How about you, John?
If you're kind of like me, I'm reading Iterate and Optimize too. That's sort of my standing in line at Starbucks reading. You pick it up and you just pick up quickly from where you were. If you're anything like me, the very beginning probably didn't grab you as much as what you're going to find about 10% in when they start talking about the organization of Sterling and Stone and all the different players involved in running the organization, and just all the nuts and bolts of what's going on. That stuff made the book price, which wasn't very expensive, it was like $2.99, worth it for me as an indie author, because I'm just fascinated with getting into their beeswax,
Mm-hmm.
But the very, very beginning was what are your goals, and do you write them down on a list, and what is success to you, and things, kind of Oprah-y kind of things that I'm not really that interested in, but I'm sure a lot of people are. I've done this for 3 years now. I know what those things are, so At least I think I do. So I give that 2 thumbs up. Starting out 10% in for me. Um, the other thing I kind of was reading, so I'm writing a third-person narrative, and I wanted to kind of like up my my treasure trove of tricks, I guess. As I've never written third person for novels. I did a little short story here and there, but so I picked up Salem's Lot, and I'm like 10% in, and they're still going to the movies and holding hands and watching the paint turn different colors, and I'm just wondering when it's gonna, get to the damn vampires already.
But have you, sorry, before you go any further, have you read any Stephen King other than The Long Walk?
Yeah, I have. I read
And you didn't
Misery.
and you didn't know that that's what was going to happen? Oh yeah, Misery's better. Yeah.
Yeah, Misery is awesome, and The Dead Zone was awesome. I read The Dead Zone a long time ago as an impatient child, and I had no problem with all this stuff. If he had it in there, I don't think he did. It seemed fast paced, or I would have dropped it. I tried reading it and some other things. I tried reading The Stand. Stand, I had to drop that. I'm gonna have to pick it up one day. Oh, and I read the first book of the Gunslinger series. I didn't have a problem with the first book. So, but this one, it's just killing me, and I hope he kind of kicks in to high gear. And I'm just wondering if I need to pick up another third-person narrative type of person that's a little closer to the way I write, I guess, which is get right to it. So.
Depends on what genres are you looking for? Are you looking for is it the horror fantasy type stuff, or because I think you might like Donald Westlake.
I've heard that I'll like him from Stephen Campbell, as a matter of fact. I think he writes some kind of thief stuff, right?
Yeah, it's the Dortmunder.
Yeah, he mentioned that to me.
Main character. It's kind of a band of thieves that nothing ever goes right for them. They're always pulling heists, and it's funny and it's cool, and it's a nice sort of quick, easy reads. They're good books.
I got to do that because that was kind of on my list a while back, but you know how it is. Like it drops off and you forget that you even remembered it.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, that's what Goodreads is for, to put it on your to-be-read list.
That's right.
You should also read. You might like the Matthew Scudder books. Shoot.
I might have.
For some stupid reason, the author's name is escaping me now, even though I've read tons of his books. But
I'll never know now.
Yeah, you can't put Matthew Scudder into Google or anything.
Don't put baby in a closet.
I'm gonna have to do that while you're talking because I feel like an idiot for forgetting the author's name now because he's Lawrence Block. There you go. The bro brain had to pull it out of the files. Anyway, so Salem's Lot.
Yeah. By the way, I read one book of the Bernie Rodenbar kind of series with Lawrence Block. It's about a thief. I didn't read it this time around, but I'm just saying I like Lawrence Block. He writes really well.
Anything else other than, was that it?
Reading my own crap over and over again. That's it. Because I'm writing that book.
Okay. Excuse me. So we'll move into our topic and talk about reading by the numbers and where this came from. I think I was thinking about it because we always hear people here set their goals at the beginning of the year. I'm going to read 200 books this year or whatever. And I heard a friend of the group talking about reading, his reading for the year, and he'll know who he is when he listens to the podcast. But, he said something along the lines of, I was reading a book and really enjoying it, but I, stopped 2/3 of the way through because it's 400 pages long, and I'm going to read 100 books this year, so I don't have time to read a book that's that long. And that got me thinking, because I think we've all set those goals before, like I'm going to read 100 books this year. But I think, I could say I'm going to read 100 books this year. I can read 100 books this weekend if I read Dr. Seuss, and I just wonder, how do you guys set your goals for the year? What are your reading goals this year? And we'll go from there. Do you guys have a goal?
I'll go.
Go
ahead.
Go ahead, John. No, go ahead.
All right, I'll make it quick. My only goal this year, as far as reading, and I have had one goal in the past, that the only other reading goal in my life that I've ever had, my goal this year is simply to read a book a week for the show. I thought I could read more books this year, and that would be how. And I'm failing miserably. So that's me. Good.
Yeah, I used to be a zealous goal setter years ago. And when I say years ago, I mean 2 or 3 years ago, before I really got into writing seriously. I usually read 100 books a year,
Whoa.
maybe less than that. It depends, because I start some books and I finish some others. I don't. I consider if I've started a book and I don't finish it, I still count that book toward my 100 goal. So, the number of books I actually finish might end up being in the 50s. It's usually around a book a week for the show, but I've gotten away from that. And I guess the reason I've gotten away from it is because everything is kind of so unpredictable for me that I just have to read when I can. I mean, I make time every night to sit down and read something, but I just never know how much I'm going to read. And I'm trying to get into reading longer books. So if Game of Thrones landed on my desk, I don't want to turn it away, which is something kind of a change for me, something I probably wouldn't have said about a year ago. So yeah, I just don't. I just kind of go with the flow. I just kind of enjoy what I'm reading when I'm reading it.
Yeah, because I think too, what is a book is one of the questions I come to as well. So I think there's 2 points to that. One, I think, is it probably takes you a lot less time to blow through a James Patterson book than it does to read Don Quixote. The other question then is and I've got some visual aids here for you. Is this a book? Does this count as reading a book? If you put it on Goodreads, this is for the audio listeners. I'm holding up volume 5 of Saga, which is pretty thin. Does that count?
Yeah.
So what the hell is this? Is this one book? So now I'm holding up the Walking Dead Compendium 3, which is a tome that, God, that's massive. And that's part of the, and I want to read both, and so I don't really care about the numbers on Goodreads. But the other thing I think that messes you up is if you, so say you download and put on Goodreads the Fat Vampire series by Johnny B. Truant, and it's was it four books, I believe.
6 books.
So if you have one person who puts the box set on Goodreads, and that's one book. And then you can have someone else who puts each individual book in their list and ticks them off, and now they've read 6 books, right? So it's part of the so it's hard, like, and I think people start to cheat, right? Where they say, like, I think it's a shame if people change their reading habits and start reading the things, rather than reading what you want, reading shorter works, right? Like, I've got to hit my 100 books, so I'm going to read some short stories for the next little while, even though that's not really what I want to read. I really want to read this new massive, J.K. Rowling book that came out or whatever, but I'm going to leave that for next year because I'm behind on my 100 book goal.
Yeah, it's almost like a bell curve. It's like the really for me, like the really short stories, like a single short story. I can't count that toward my goal, so I just kind of tend to leave those out. But then you have like the Game of Thrones on the other end, where they're like 1,000 pages. Well, I don't want to read that because then I'm never going to hit my goals, and so I feel like I end up staying in the middle, which I think is starting to become a problem for me. Like I just feel like I feel like there should be a better way to account for all of it.
Do you think we put
and poems?
Or do we put too much into the numbers? You know what I mean? Like
I think so. I think it's what you make it. I mean, the people that are setting the goals, I mean, you're not fooling anybody. I mean, who cares if, what do I care if some guy in Alabama is, reading 100 books a year? I mean, I think you're only doing that to make yourself feel good. So at the end of the day, you're really only cheating yourself.
Well, I think that the other thing is that you got to ask yourself why you set the goal in the beginning. Why not say, my goal this year is to stack 100 plates on top of each other so that I can have 100. Isn't the goal the books and what's in the books? For example, maybe your goal is to become a better engineer. So maybe the goal is to read, 10 engineering books. right? See, that sounds like a sensible kind of goal, because sitting down to read an engineering book is a chore, and if you want to increase your skills, you maybe you should make a goal like that, to kind of read the stuff you don't want to read so that you can become a better engineer or
Yeah,
writer or something.
I think you're right. Like, it's the reason for the goal. So, because I
Yeah.
think that was reminding me, Michael, wasn't your goal last year? Didn't you do something along the lines of every third book I read will be
Yeah,
nonfiction
poetry
or something?
collection, or yeah, yeah,
Right.
that was really hard to keep, by the way. Yeah, but no, go ahead, Patrick. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, like, yeah, I think we set the goals for the right reasons, right? So someone will say, I'm going to read 100 books. I'm going to read a book a week. I'm going to whatever. We set the goal for the right reason, and I think the reason is we want to make sure that we're reading. We want to make sure we put time aside for it. It's a priority for us, but it is one of those things that if you don't, you know, it's just like the writing. Put your butt in the chair and pick up the book. A couple weeks can go by, and you're like, wow, I haven't read anything in a while. But the how we pick the goal is maybe the problem. So my goal, I mean, last year I think I had I can't remember what it was, but my goals as far as Goodreads go are pretty meaningless now anyway, because I went through and deleted everything off my Goodreads account that I didn't like. Just to get all those 1 stars out of there. So my Goodreads is now sort of a curated list of the books that I enjoyed. And my goal currently really is just to read every day. And if I read 10 pages or 50, at least I got some reading done.
Yeah. See, it's funny you mention like Goodreads, because I feel like I keep running into the same problem with Goodreads, in that I'll have a week like I did a month ago where I read 4 books in a week, right? And I'm on a roll, and I get on Goodreads, and I'm like, okay, I want to read that, 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 and all of a sudden I'm focusing on the numbers, and I know that I'm focusing on the numbers, and I know that I shouldn't be focusing on the numbers, yet I do it anyway, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm falling off the bandwagon, and I'm not using Goodreads anymore, because that takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, I did
Like
go
it's
through.
like
I did the same thing. I went through and curated my at the end of the year, I think it was. I went through on my to be read bookshelf and deleted everything off of it, because I figured I had too many books on there, like over 100 books that I had on my to be read list, and it's like, it's going to take me 5 years to read all these books. And I'm like, if there's anything on here that I'm meant to read, or that I really truly want to read enough that it sticks in my head enough to remember to actually come back to it whenever I have time, then I will. Otherwise, because it's like, we've been doing this podcast, and you talk to people, and it's like every time somebody mentions something that's even remotely interesting, throw it on the list.
Exactly.
And then it just gets too unwieldy, and there's stuff on it, there's stuff that you really do want to read, stuff that John mentioned 8 months ago, and you think, that might be interesting, but it's 6 pages down the list, and you just start to forget what's on it. So I just cleaned it right out, and right now the books on my to be read list, there's a few on there, but they're all books that I've downloaded and are sort of actually, they're not just to be read someday, they're to be read next, when I'm done reading what I'm reading right now.
Well, it's funny, because as a writer, I've gotten away from outlining, and this is kind of a non sequitur, and I'm going to make a point. I've gotten away from writing, or from outlining. So, per Dean Wesley Smith, Writing into the Dark, I've just written into the dark. I don't pay much attention. I just kind of enjoy it. I'm in the moment. And I've started to find that I'm doing that with my reading as well. So, I don't know. I've just kind of opened my mind up to all these different genres, and it's just a fun journey, just like writing is. And I think that Dean Wesley Smith has a point when he says that if you know what you're going to write when it comes to outlining, then you're going to get bored. And I kind of feel the same way about reading. Like, if I know what I'm going to read tomorrow or 3 weeks from now because it's on a list, then I get less excited about it.
I think I get that too. That's because it's if you're reading something because you feel you have to, and honestly, that could be one of the reasons that it took me a little bit to get into Midshipmen's Hope. Um, it's a book that I tried reading a year ago. John, I can't remember when the first time was that you were ever on the show or we ever spoke and you mentioned it. And it took me a while to get into it because it wasn't what I wanted to be reading at the time. Now that I'm into it, I'm enjoying it quite a bit, and it is what I want to read sort of on a day-to-day basis right now. But that slows you down when you're not reading what you want to be reading. So you are kind of, I think, doing yourself a disservice. Like I really, really struggled with Don Quixote when I was reading that, to the point that I wasn't reading anything because that's what I thought I should be reading. And like I got to the point in the story where it's like, for a classic, this is a story where nothing really happens.
It's one of those stories where the synopsis is more interesting than the story itself.
I give up. I'm just going to go back, like you said. I'm going to read something that excites me. I want to read, and that's, I've been reading those Marcus Saki books and just burning through those like crazy because I'm enjoying them.
I got to pick those up because, and I won't tell you when I do it because I don't want to feel like I'm reading homework either. That's what it is. None of us want to have homework, looming ahead of us. So that's what it's like. Any kind of goal that you'll never be able to live up to your goals. It's like losing weight. Who wants to show back up at the Weight Watchers meeting? If you didn't eat right that week.
Yeah. Well, if you do, and it turns into we've seen this. I think everyone's lived through this with the writing, where it's like, oh, I didn't write today, and you feel like crap, and then it's like makes it even harder to get to it tomorrow. And if your goal is to read 100 books or 200 books or whatever it is, like reading 200 books, it's too much. But I'm going to read every day, like the exercising, like you're saying, like saying I'm going to lose 100 pounds. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm going to walk every day and not stop eating chips, or like the smaller goals, that add up, right?
That's cool. No, I agree. I that's something I need to do is to get back into. I'm gonna read every day because when you think about it, it's like standard goal setting, right? You shouldn't make goals that aren't smart. And when I say smart, I mean the acronym SMART, right? And I think it's easy to make reading goals that aren't smart, where you're focusing so much on the numbers that you're not really focusing on the enjoyment. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if we all wanted to do homework, we'd go back to school, right?
Yeah,
I have no intention of going back to an English class anytime soon.
There is one goal, as I said earlier, I guess in the beginning, I've never been one to make reading goals. This would be the first time that I guess within the last 5 years. So there was one goal that I made, and it worked out pretty well. I think I have 8 books on it now, and that was to read more independent authors, because I'd always read traditional authors up until kind of the whole Kindle thing happened. Now, I've technically fallen off that goal, but I think it was somewhat successful. Anybody who goes to my blog, which is john-l-monk.com, over on the left side, you'll see a bunch of books, and those are the awesome indies, as I was calling them about a year or 2 years ago, when I set myself the goal. And the project is called the Awesome Indie Project. At the top, there's a tab. You can click it, and it sort of talks about my reasoning and all that kind of stuff. So and I didn't even realize I was making a reading goal overtly. I was making a reading goal almost organically, in the wild. It just sort of evolved into my life where I had never had a reading goal before. This show is now the second reading goal that I've ever formerly had, which is, try to read a book a week. So.
Yeah, that's an admirable goal. Reading more indie authors. A goal, kind of along the same lines, something I've been doing is trying to make it a point to reread books. Because I think one of the things that I do is I think all three of us don't really have a reading problem. Our worst weeks are still better than most people's years, right? And so I feel like I read a lot of books by a lot of authors, a lot of new authors, but I don't always do as good of a job rereading the books that I enjoyed to study those and figure out why I enjoyed them. And I don't know if I think we talked about this when Lisa was on the show, almost 2 years ago now. But I don't know how you feel about that, John. I remember we talked about it, Patrick. But
Rereading books.
Yeah.
When I reread books, it's purely like a guilty pleasure. It's funny. I guess over Christmas, kind of that whole December time or whatever, I reread the first three Midshipmen Hope kind of books, and I knew I was going to be coming on this show, so I didn't go to number 4. And it was, none of those books are, none of those, they're not indie price. They're real traditional price, so they're kind of expensive. And so I ended up reading those again, and then I want to go back and reread The Gunslinger so I can get into the series and finish it. So there's definitely a need for me to kind of go back and reread books, but I wouldn't say it's like a formal goal yet. So.
Yeah, I find I'll reread something, and I've only got. I mean, again, we talked about this probably 2 years ago. There aren't many books that I'm willing to reread. It's the same for me with like most TV shows and movies, and I don't typically buy movies to watch over and over and over again. I don't watch TV shows over.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I want to see something new. Except for the very rare. I've said Justified as a show I'll rewatch. When it comes to books, I'll reread Good Omens every so often because that's a book I just can't get enough of. Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. I used to reread Ender's Game, but I think that one's kind of fallen out of favor for me. Maybe I've read it too many times over the years. It's time to find something new. I will probably reread The Long Walk.
Me too.
Because I enjoyed that one thoroughly last year. I might not read it again for another year or two, but I'd rather move on. I've got Marathon Man sitting on my Kindle that I keep meaning to get to. William Goldman. I loved The Princess Bride and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and this is another story that he wrote, and I've never read it, and I really want to. And so I'm more likely to look for something new than to reread. Have you read Treasure Island yet this year, Michael?
Not yet this year. I usually do it over the summer.
Did you read it last year?
So, yeah, I read it last year. I actually picked up the audiobook and listened to that, and that was a blast. So,
is there anyone special narrating that?
No, and I will admit I wasn't crazy about the guy that did Long John Silver, but he was okay.
That seems like something that should be narrated by maybe Stephen Fry.
Yeah, that he would be a good one to do it. You got to have someone who's like thoroughly British to do Long John Silver. British. Just
Stephen Fry should just narrate everything.
Glottal stops every other word. Yeah. Yeah, so it was good. Like I love the way the narrator told the story, but yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, I did reread it last year, but not this year.
What's so good about it? I mean, I've heard of it, but I've never read it. Why do you read it every year?
It's just one of my favorite books. I read it a few years back, and it just captivated me. I loved the characters, I loved the storytelling, and what blew me away about the book was that it was written in, like late 1800s.
Okay.
And what's so cool about it is that it feels like something that was written today. It's still got, you read it, it's still got, the archaic constructions and things like that, but it just doesn't feel like anything else that was contemporary for his time. You read that and then you read Sherlock Holmes and completely different. Like, this is poetic. It's like it's just written so beautifully, while still telling a really compelling story. Like,
well, maybe you should change your book of the month for next month.
Yeah,
I could.
I have a hardbound copy of Treasure Island here that I was given. God, I'd have to open up the book to look at the inscription, but in the 70s, it's sometimes. So I've read it over the years.
Yeah. Oh, and John also.
Long,
yeah.
John. It's not a.
It's not.
It's not a massive.
250 pages, maybe. Yeah. Oh, and another reason, how could I forget? Long John Silver is like the best villain ever. So.
Yeah.
Easily.
What about Darth Vader?
Darth Vader, come on. What?
Darth Maul.
Darth Vader, the best villain ever? Really? No, I'm just
have we done that episode? Best villain? I think we have.
Yeah, we did. But we probably could do it again, though.
And yeah, I don't
think
think Darth Vader was on that list.
No. Although you could
Yeah,
put Kylo Ren on there.
Kylo Ren.
I haven't seen the new
I
movie.
haven't either. I was just throwing it out, see if I could get a response from John.
I've been burned too many times by reboots and remakes, and
I liked it.
I did hear I was reading today that they're going to be doing a fifth Indiana Jones movie
Yeah, I saw that today too.
due out in 2019, which I will not see.
Did you see that last one?
No, I
I
haven't seen
saw the last one.
It
Yeah,
was
it is.
ridiculous.
It wasn't really that good.
It was terrible. There was a
You know,
nuclear blast, and the guy jumped in a fridge,
refrigerator.
closed the door, and he survived. He got shot
Yeah.
like a million miles away, and he landed, and he got out. If he could get shot that far, he would have been splattered along the inside of the refrigerator.
Well, you know what?
But that's not.
I was fine with all of that. I was even fine with the stupid aliens at the end of that movie. What killed that movie for me was Shia LaBeouf.
Mm.
And I normally like Shia LaBeouf, he just did not. And you guys all have seen it, and I'm sure people listening, it's not a spoiler. Yeah, but I won't go
It's
into
already
that. But you guys
spoiled.
know what I'm talking about with the spoiler.
It's already a
With-
spoiled movie.
with Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah,
With what? That he's Indy's kid or whatever?
yeah, it's done.
I don't think.
And he's supposed to-
I think that was
Supposed to
probably.
pick up the.
I think that was spoiled before the movie even came out, wasn't it?
It probably was, but interestingly enough, though, that I guess the article I was reading said that the two things that weren't mentioned in that press release that they're making a new indie movie was George Lucas and Shia LaBeouf. So maybe there's hope for this fifth movie.
No, there isn't. Okay, because where are they? Okay, because and we're way off topic here, and we'll wrap it up soon. But I was thinking about this today, actually. First Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. You've got Nazis and a religious artifact, right?
Which is still the
Ark of
best
the
movie in the
Covenant.
series.
Movie
Yeah,
two,
yeah.
movie two. You've got weird cult.
Kalima,
Yeah, like I don't, so we've got cults and that kind of thing. Movie three, we're back to religious artifacts and the Cup of Christ, and the best movie of the bunch probably. Although you could argue Raiders and movie three for sure. Movie four, Aliens. So like where, they're going to do something mystical or religious.
Probably.
They might write mystical or religious. They've done aliens, they've done religious artifacts, and then cultish kind of stuff. I can't think of where else can they take it.
Hacking.
Time travel?
It's going to be a hacking
Hacking.
adventure. Yeah, with computer.
But he's an
networks.
archaeologist. It's got to
well,
be.
there's plenty. I mean, there's
They did
there's
aliens.
Oh, Atlantis.
Yeah.
Atlantis.
plenty. Atlantis.
There
Yeah,
it is.
there's
There you go. That's
there you
it.
go.
It's got to be
Atlantis, or they could do
Bermuda Triangle. It's
dinosaurs.
going to be dinosaurs, like the journey to the center of the earth.
Bigfoot.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna. That's my guess. If we're gonna have a pool or whatever, I'm voting Atlantis. That's, I think, the craziest potential cool, but they'll probably ruin it. Thing is that they might try.
Yeah. I thought Harrison Ford was great in the fourth movie, even though it wasn't as good. I still felt like he felt like Indy to me.
Yeah, I agree.
But by the time that comes out, that's 10 years after the fourth movie. I mean, he's slowing down a little bit. I mean, he's had all these accidents, and I don't know. It just seems like they're just trying to milk the series.
Yeah.
But
That's what they're doing.
yeah, well, there's that silencer. Maybe we'll wrap it up before this descends into a rant on George Lucas. Oh, Patrick Bros.
Well, while he's
Michael,
frozen. Okay.
What's that, Patrick? You just cut in and out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. You guys hear me?
Yeah, but why don't we wrap it up, because Google's starting to mess up again.
You guys getting. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys. We're getting serious lag here, so I'm going to wrap it up and see if hope
We're going to wrap it up.
that the video coming along tonight. We got topic, but it was a fun discussion. So and have a great week of reading. And
What